FTX was the world's second largest crypto exchange, but suddenly it blew up. In less than a week, cryptocurrency billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried went from being one of the richest men on earth to going bankrupt. His failure in the industry has been one of the most significant defeats the crypto universe has faced so far. While customers lost their money, FTX lost $32 billion and became the target of numerous investigations by the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Department of Justice. What happened to make things go so wrong? And who should we blame for FTX's downfall? Investors don't seem to care about the answer. They just want their money back. Unfortunately, those millions are gone forever. Before all this scandal, the empire built by Bankman-Fried came to be compared to such titans of finance as John Pierpont Morgan and Warren Buffett. But last week, it fell like a domino after a run on deposits left the cryptocurrency exchange with an $8 billion deficit. The situation led to FTX declaring bankruptcy, leading to the death of one of the companies that cryptocurrency investors trusted the most. The case was terrible for the market and led to hundreds of cryptocurrencies losing their value after many people lost faith in the market. If the world's second largest exchange took its investors' money, who's to say that the rest of the exchanges are safe? The lack of regulation in the crypto market has given rise to scenarios like this. Just this year alone, we witnessed the Terra Luna scam. Meanwhile, high global inflation and bankruptcy filings have led to people like you and me not knowing who we should trust with our money. As a result, uncertainty is growing, and some organizations are taking advantage of the latent fear in the market to make more money. The situation couldn't be worse. In an interview last Sunday, Bankman-Fried expressed his regret over the collapse of FTX. He shared some Twitter posts, conversations with his employees, and text messages to journalists. But when it came to the disappearance of the money, he offered little details on the questions the whole planet was asking. Where did all the money go? Is it possible that Bankman-Fried has taken billions of dollars from his clients to bail out another company he founded? As I'm recording this video, the Department of Justice and the SEC are investigating the relationship between FTX and the Alameda Research Company. This could be the key to the mystery we are trying to solve. In 2017, Alameda Research was founded in the US. By the end of the year, it had already moved to Hong Kong. Sam hired his friends through that company and appointed MIT economist Glenn Ellison's daughter, Caroline Ellison, as CEO. In an interview for YouTube, Caroline Ellison stated that she does not like to use stop losses as she does not consider them a good way to manage risk. Something that caused a lot of discomfort for people who bet their money on her company, hoping to protect their capital. When FTX filed for bankruptcy, all eyes were on FTX's sister company, Alameda Research, whose balance sheet deficit may have accelerated the downfall of the exchange that used to rival Binance. Historically, FTX and Binance have always been great rivals, just like Pepsi and Coca-Cola, and Burger King and McDonald's. So the two companies long competed for the #1 spot on the market. A simple oversight by Binance could have made FTX the biggest exchange on earth, so Zhao's company always had to be one step ahead. Even if Binance wanted to beat FTX, it knew that the collapse of its main competitor would be bad for its business. So the rival platform originally agreed to help save FTX from its supposed liquidity crisis and take over the struggling business. Unfortunately, Binance backed out soon after reading the latest news reports pointing to the mishandling of customer funds and alleged ongoing legal investigations. 2 days after Binance refused to acquire FTX, the company filed for voluntary bankruptcy, and Sam Bankman-Fried resigned. But why was the collapse of FTX and Alameda so closely linked? Can we call this a coincidence, or is something else going on behind the scenes? Alameda had accumulated a large margin position in FTX, meaning the company had borrowed funds from Bankman-Fried's exchange. According to him, it was substantially larger than he believed. However, the downside risk was very significant. The size of Alameda's position ran into billions of dollars. Moreover, the company had great power in FTX's decision-making. Bankman-Fried agreed with those who said he had expanded his business interests too quickly. He tried to take on more than he could, causing him to become inefficient in all the industries he entered. His multiple commitments led him to overlook signs that FTX was in serious trouble. So the same guy responsible for guarding billions of dollars suddenly had more pressing things to do than worry about his investors' money. If Bankman-Fried had been more focused on what he was doing, he would have been more thorough and able to grasp what was happening in the market. But was he really as distracted as he would have us believe? Or is it possible that he intentionally planned the collapse of his own company? First, let's look at the reasons that led to FTX's collapse. Bankman-Fried was the most responsible for the collapse of his own company. In recent months, signs emerged that FTX's business empire was in jeopardy and that its ambitions exceeded its reach, according to interviews with 9 of his colleagues and business partners. This year, he embarked on a buying spree and invested in beleaguered crypto companies without sharing this critical information with his staff. Sam thought everything would be fine as long as he had money. He believed he could make any decision thinking there would be no consequences, even if his employees were responsible for turning his ideas into a thriving exchange that, for a long time, had the trust of the whole world. When he was told that he should hire more employees because he was overburdened, he refused to listen to suggestions. This hubris would lead him to lose all his money. Bankman-Fried was in Washington pushing an ambitious regulatory agenda while speaking critically about Changpeng Zhao, the CEO of Binance. He intended to be part of the political class. We'll talk later about the fallout from Bankman-Fried's statements and how Zhao eventually let go of his hand. FTX managed the money of billions of venture capital firms that had decided to invest in the company. Despite this, it had not invited any of these outside investors to join its board. Bankman-Fried spent most of his days isolated in the Bahamas, surrounded by his small group of colleagues, some of whom had romantic relationships with FTX employees. He lived with his top lieutenants in a penthouse in Albany, a 600-acre seaside resort located on the island of New Province in the Bahamas. Sam was very dependent on this small group, stating that most people cannot maintain contact or have close communication with more than 15 people. But when you're the leader of one of the world's largest companies, taking such an isolationist stance can cause problems. It would be like pretending that Steve Jobs could have made Apple one of the biggest companies in the world after locking himself in his mother's house and refusing to talk to his employees. Leaders are the face of the organization, and they can't simply limit themselves to talking to people they like. So even if Sam was comfortable surrounded by his closest friends, he had obligations to the people who worked for him and his customers. Today, Sam refuses to comment on his current location as he is concerned for his safety. While his concerns are justified, they show that Bankman-Fried does not want to take responsibility for one of the biggest collapses in the history of the business world, and prefers to lock himself away in his fantasy world. So all we know is that he is somewhere in the Bahamas, wishing he had never founded FTX. Believe it or not, the FTX crash could have been avoided. Investigations by numerous agencies point to the relationship between Alameda and FTX as the primary cause of Bankman-Fried's downfall. Alameda made millions of dollars exploiting inefficiencies in the Bitcoin market. His next move was to relocate the company to Hong Kong, as the regulatory environment was much more favorable. He moved with Caroline Ellison, a former trader, at the financial firm Jane Street. Alameda's intentions towards FTX were not as honorable as you might imagine. FTX and Alameda were closely linked. Alameda traded heavily on the FTX platform, profiting when FTX clients lost money. This dynamic caused a conflict of interest between the two companies. Bankman-Fried tried to defend this arrangement by claiming that Alameda had provided liquidity through capital injections that allowed other clients to trade. However, his excuses did little to satisfy large investors. Although Caroline Ellison was Alameda's CEO, Bankman-Fried was also involved in making decisions about the large transactions that went forward at both companies. Alameda and FTX operated from separate offices. However, a guest who visited the FTX facility found Ellison sitting within sight of computers that revealed FTX business data. In other words, the boundaries between one company and the other were virtually non-existent. Ellison and Bankman-Fried could not have pursued their efforts had it not been for the coterie of executives who ran this Bahamian cryptocurrency operation. Among those in charge were FTX's Director of Engineering, Nishad Singh, the exchange's Chief Technology Officer, Gary Wang, and Product Manager, Ramnik Arora. One of the reasons Bankman-Fried decided to move FTX to the Bahamas was because it was attracted by the country's regulatory situation that allowed it to offer risky trading options not legal in the United States. After moving FTX to the Bahamas in 2021, FTX investors could borrow money from the platform to bet on the future value of their favorite cryptocurrencies. So naturally, many investors, blinded by greed, lost all their money. But that didn't stop Bankman-Fried from continuing to profit from its customers. Before this scandal, Ellison and Bankman-Fried had a romantic relationship. They lived in a 5-bedroom penthouse in the Albany Resort's Orchid building, along with Ellison, Singh, Wang, and 6 others. The relationship between the two business partners showed that Bankman-Fried was well aware of what was happening in Alameda. Moreover, he had a love affair with the company's current CEO and a vested interest in seeing Alameda prosper. But the cost to save Alameda ended up being too high. Bankman-Fried's colleagues were very close and spent most of their time together. However, people outside his circle could barely get time to talk to Sam. He was very proud that his company, FTX, had an employee headcount of just 300, much smaller than its main competitors, Binance and Coinbase. However, this lack of skilled staff led to Sam losing millions of dollars because he wanted to spare a few salaries. Staff is one of the key factors in the rise or fall of a company. Ordinary people were responsible for creating great empires like Rome or building wonders like the Roman Colosseum. And it's these people who have been behind the success of Facebook, TikTok, Microsoft, and the creation of any item you might have in your home. If a company is understaffed, many tasks end up being performed by the same person, and naturally, this leads to a much higher risk of errors. While his employees were understaffed, Bankman-Fried created an ambitious philanthropic operation and invested in dozens of other cryptocurrency companies. He also bought shares in the trading company Robinhood and contributed money to political campaigns. In addition, he offered Elon Musk billions of dollars to help him buy Twitter. All these things made Bankman-Fried neglect his own business, leaving FTX to collapse. On November 2nd, reporter Ian Allison released new findings, revealing that approximately $5.8 billion of $14.6 billion of assets in Alameda's researchers' balance were tied to the FTT token. Based on the internal leaked documents, this explosive finding got Sam in serious trouble. The FTT token was created by FTX out of thin air. Unlike gold, diamonds, and land, it had nothing to back up its real value. To make matters worse, Alameda wasn't exactly the perfect business ally. Since it was making money at the expense of FTX customers' losses, no one wanted to be associated with either company. The revelation of the close relationship between FTX and Alameda caused investors to remember the collapse of Terra Luna and sell their stocks for fear of a similar situation occurring. Negative speculation about this financial institution eventually became a reality, triggering massive withdrawals due to uncertainty. This caused both companies to face the same liquidity problems that investors feared. These concerns about Alameda's balance sheet caused hundreds of thousands of people to seek to protect their capital. The massive withdrawals caused a domino effect, in which each withdrawal drove more people to withdraw their money, whether they were even aware of the news. This is how the value of Bankman-Fried's company plummeted. One of the biggest mistakes Bankman-Fried made was to criticize his rival Zhao in several private meetings. As the owner of Binance and a former FTX investor, Zhao owned many FTT tokens that FTX traded in the market. In a deleted tweet, the FTX founder questioned Zhao's Chinese ancestry. Zhao is Canadian and, for many years, has been teased with the idea that Binance is a Chinese company. That's why he ended up digging his grave after criticizing and mocking his main competitor and partner. Although he deleted the tweet, the damage was already done. After that, Zhao announced on Twitter that he was selling his FTTs. His message spread panic and led to many panicked customers rushing to withdraw their funds from FTX. So naturally, this caused both Bankman-Fried companies to lose much of their value almost simultaneously. In just 72 hours, investors withdrew £6 billion before the situation would come to a head on the morning of November the 8th. According to CoinGlass, FTX reached a balance of just 1 Bitcoin. Although it recovered some of its Bitcoins, the company had lost too much money to continue trading. At that moment, Bankman-Fried tried to sell his company to Zhao. But after seeing the company's legal problems, the Binance owner decided to turn down the offer at the last minute. So, Sam tried to at least rescue Alameda Research. Yet, Alameda's troubled finances set in motion the events that led FTX to declare bankruptcy. He tried to secretly use client funds to bail out its sister company, Alameda Research, but unfortunately, that move created a $10 billion hole in FTX's books. As if that wasn't enough, he covered up his fraudulent activities for months without informing his employees, clients, or investors of the company's impending collapse. By the time they knew, it was too late, because FTX had already filed for bankruptcy. The situation gave rise to possibly the biggest hoax in cryptocurrency history. After losing Binance's support, Bankman-Fried and his team frantically went into the market to look for new partners who could help them save their company. But no company wanted to follow Bankman-Fried to its end. The company's owner promised to use every penny of his exchange to reimburse his users. However, he had lost his credibility, so with his track record, it is unlikely that he will ever be entrusted with managing third-party money. Sam had a close relationship with the Solana ecosystem. When Solana experienced a massive boom, thanks to the Layer 1 alternative narrative, his native Sol token skyrocketed in value, as did many tokens in the ecosystem, including Serum. The entrepreneur had invested a large amount of money in Serum, but the crash of FTX forced him to sell all its assets to pay for the damage. The massive sale of Serum could trigger a drop in token prices and leads to companies outside of FTX losing all their money. Therefore, the Solana ecosystem had been indirectly harmed. The FTX crash had also caused many other crypto assets to lose value. Due to the uncertainty, many first-time investors have decided to sell their cryptocurrencies for fear that the FTX situation would happen again, causing the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum to fall in recent weeks. Sadly, the FTX fraud has tarnished the industry's reputation, leading the crypto-curious to stay away from cryptocurrencies until the situation calms down. In the meantime, those who have lost their life savings will never get their money back. If there is one big loser from the collapse of FTX and Alameda, it is the customers. Even if the venture capital firms lost their invested capital, retail investors have borne the brunt. Despite this, FTX's former CEO tried to keep FTX investors inside the company until the last second, by launching a series of outright lies on Twitter to prevent users from withdrawing their funds. The main ones responsible for this tragedy are the US regulators close to the company. While the US Securities and Exchange Commission chairman, Gary Gensler, devoted his organization's resources to chasing down smaller DeFi protocols and allowed Sam Bankman-Fried to run a fraud right under his nose. Bankman-Fried had donated considerable money to politics and had been the second largest funder of Joe Biden's campaign, so the government was much more flexible with his companies. If the crypto industry had fair and better regulated legislation, the situation that led to this FTX collapse could have been avoided. Let's hope that this crash will help increase the exchange's vigilance so that we will never have to talk about a similar case. That's it for today. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with the latest news about FTX. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.